face. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thanks for taking time out this morning to join us for this EMAO coffee talk. Um, Logan County, as well as 10 other counties, went through a tornado incident on March 14th of 2024, and it was a big hit for us. I know some of the people that I see here, including Aaron and Jeff and Melissa, and probably others because I can't see the whole screen of names right now, helped out in our EOC here. And some of you have heard me talk about different aspects of what happened after the initial response. Today, we're going to be talking just briefly about what our AAR process has been to do the review from this tornado. Oh, how do I make the screen go? Sorry about that. There we go. So we held our first meeting on June 18th of 2024. The AAR planning team included myself, the sheriff, and one of his uh, chief leaders. And I believe he's a lieutenant, but he has a lot of military experience and leadership. And he participated with us, and then also Mary Rutan Hospital. Later on, we added LUC Regional Planning Commission and a couple of other people that work with the EMA, either as part-time or volunteer, to help us as we refine the process. When we had our initial meeting in June, there was a lot of ongoing response work that was still happening, especially in the areas of debris cleanup. We were finished collecting, but they were still in the process of chipping everything and hauling it away. Just massive amounts of debris work was still occurring during that time. We had time constraints because of the workload. We also had FEMA still here in Logan County. We were deep into the process, nearing a final draft of our community recovery plan, and long-term recovery had just barely begun. So we still had some people in hotels, a lot of people in campers, a lot of unstable housing stuff going on while we were starting to work on the after-action review. Golly, sorry about that. If I move the mouse, I lose the clicker to move it up. Um, so as we met and discussed it, we determined that our best approach would be to do an online survey initially, that the planning team would then review that survey data to identify key topics. And then we would conduct an in-person meeting to talk about what had come from the survey and develop solutions, followed by the preparation of our final after-action review with any corrective actions that were identified. So when we did the online survey, our first question, anybody could fill it out, but the first question, we broke it out into what time period is your response about. So if you're talking about the first 12 hours, 12 to 72, or day 4 to 2 weeks. And then we had the person who would fill out the survey had to answer what discipline or topic is your response about. So each person could fill out as many responses as they wanted to. So if somebody wanted to turn in 50 different comments about different topics, they could do as many as they wanted, no limit. They could do it anonymously, or they could put their contact information in there if they wanted to be contacted back about some of the stuff that they commented on. And so this was just so that the information would be sortable by the design team so that we would be able to handle that, because emotions were very high at the time. And we figured that if we did something in an unlimited format, they could write a 15-page dissertation that covered 50 topics, and it would take us forever to sort it out and to be able to do anything with that information. Whoops. I don't know what I just touched, but it wasn't what I meant. Stop that. Sorry. I've not been accused of being a pro at this. Zoom is new to me. So our survey questions, after you identified what time period and which discipline you were going to comment about, we asked them what went well, what could use improvement, and do you have recommendations for how to improve? We gave them a 500 character limit, but as I mentioned before, also unlimited responses. So they could submit as many comments as they wanted about any topic they wanted. But each, like the what went well was 500 characters, what could use improvement, 500 characters, the same for recommendations, just to kind of help them be a little bit concise in giving us the information so that it would be more usable by the design team once we had that. We distributed the link for this online survey. It was hosted by our Regional Planning Commission. They developed it for us in the SurveyMonkey tool because they have a paid subscription. They can do more with their tool than what I could do with the free version that we would have used. So we distributed that to every known responding department, and we asked them to share it with anybody they knew that had mutual aided, and it was also sent to all of our registered local volunteers. September of 2024 was the first distribution because after we came up with the plan, it took a little while to put it in. As I said, we had a lot of other things moving at the same time. After we sent it out, and it probably went to several hundred people, the first distribution ended up only getting 17 responses, with most of those being from EMA and a few from law enforcement. Very disappointing response for the high level of emotion that was attached to this whole incident. So we were not able to proceed to doing in-person meetings right away. We didn't have enough feedback to make it worth it. So there was, as you see, quite a long pause. And then we regrouped in the early midsummer of 2025, brought LUC in again and had them assist us. They made calls to all of the response departments and the known volunteers that we wanted to complete it. And then we resent that survey back out to everybody with a 2-week window. And I said 59, and that's wrong. I just looked at it. We had 57 responses total that were submitted through the survey after the second submission. And we decided we need to move ahead from that. We did get enough feedback in all of the various areas to help us have useful information. So after the survey data was collected, then the planning team met. We reviewed that raw data, and we determined like what are the key topics that actually need to be addressed in the in-person meeting. And the working data was actually shared with the discipline that the comment was about, but we did not release the full working data is always going to be a working product and not intended for full release. But if a comment was about the fire side of the response, they received all the comments that were for them. EMA got our own, the ones for debris went to our solid waste district, etc. So each group received the direct comments that were made about their own area, but that is not a full distribution and won't be because it was working data. That's a new lesson learned. And I don't know if any of you participated after the COVID incident when the state had hired a contractor to come in and do after action meetings with us. And a lot of them were virtual and they were collecting information and then we never saw it. That's probably why, because they did it so soon. Emotions were really high, and I think they took a full emotional blast in the face. And while some of what came in our survey was good information, some of it was misunderstandings and emotional stuff being dumped out. So that's part of the reason for our working through it this way, is to allow us to continue working together and process what they said, what the issue was, rather than the words that they said. So after going through all of this data, sharing it with them, we continued and planned an in-person meeting, which was scheduled for October 16th. We had 35 people attend this meeting. It was only for people who actively participated in the response. We provided a meal at sign-in, which if you've been here for different things, you might know that Lee's Chicken is a favorite because they do such a nice job and they're really easy to work with. Everybody seems to like the food, but one thing I did not think about is if you worked in the EOC, you probably ate quite a bit of Lee's Chicken because they donated, I think maybe 10 meals or something. They just called us and said, "Hey, we'll feed you 10 times. Just call and tell us when you want it and we'll make it." So we had eaten that several times during the EOC, especially during the really intense periods because we didn't have time to plan something else. But when we came into the after action meeting, everybody that worked in the EOC, the room smelled the same. It was the same people sitting around the table, even though it was a different space. And that kind of did a number on a few of us, taking us back to those very specific days. Um, I led them through a welcome and described what our process would be. We had everybody seated by response groups. So we put fire and EMS together, law enforcement together, EOC together, health and medical were together, which included our hospital, our community health and wellness group, and the health district for us. And then we had elected and jurisdiction officials together, and that would include people like even the chamber, but it's the administrators for the affected communities. LUC regional planning participated there, the zoning officers that had been really active with us in the process. We just kind of clumped all of that area together because they were the ones working together, but out in the community. We had a breakout group discussion. The timelines you see on the slide did not hold. We ended up splitting this into 2 meetings. When we planned it, I had told them I thought we need about 4 hours to get through it. And they said, no way, you can have 3. So I adjusted the schedule to try to make it work in 3. But the breakout group discussions were so good and so productive and so intense that I did allow them to go on longer because everyone was really engaged and we were gathering fantastic information. The 10-minute report outs all took longer than that. And so we actually only made it through the 10-minute report in this first meeting. Then we scheduled another one that was held November 6th, where we talked about the key issues and corrective action plan and what's next. But unfortunately, the break between one and the other, I feel disrupted the process. So if you think you need 4 hours and they say no, tell them yes, you really need 4 hours and stick to your guns because shorting it that hour, we would have actually finished in one day and it would have been a good flow from beginning to end. But because we stopped and had to come back several weeks later, we lost a few people and we gained a few people. We did some things to try to help them be up to speed with what had already been identified during the first meeting, but we just never hit stride when we came back for the second meeting. And I really wish that we hadn't had to employ the break because without the break, we were doing so well. So what you'll see on the screen as we came into our first in-person meeting, I felt that it was really important to get everybody in the right state of mind to be sharing this information with each other so that we could be productive. And you'll know that it's more than a year from our initial incident response until we did the in-person. And I'm so glad we waited because we needed that time and distance in order to really have perspective. We needed to be able to step back from the emotion and the intensity and the trauma of everything that was going on and look at it as an overall, just to get the right perspective on what actually happened and what do we really need to fix versus the emotion that we had in the early days. And even in the initial 6 months out when we sent our first survey, there was an incredible amount of emotion attached to the initial responses. And it was very intense when we met to talk about it too, but it was intense in a really good focused way, not in the negative aspects that we were seeing before. So I put this up on the screen as one of my slides when we started our in-person meeting. because I felt that it was really important to identify the capacity of a system, enterprise, or a person um, to maintain their core purpose and integrity in the face of dramatically changed circumstances. And then, whoops, keep missing my dot. So I found an article, and I don't know if any of you follow it, but in the EM network, they publish sort of a newsletter document um, that has sometimes some really neat write-ups in it. I'm not sure how to describe that. You can subscribe to their service and then you get the whole article, and I'm not subscribed, so now mostly what I see is a little blurb and then a link. But at the time, they had sent out this article called The Paradox of Control. And if you'll humor me, I'm going to read it to you because most of you won't have seen it. But I put this on the backside of all of the agenda slips that we gave everybody that had the schedule for the night. Um, and this was on the back. I adapted it slightly to fit for what we were doing, but it's from the EM Network newsletter. Our systems are built on the premise that if we train enough, plan enough, and lead with sufficient authority, we can bend chaos into order. The command structure becomes a fortress, the briefing a shield, the plan a guard against uncertainty. Yet, time and again, disaster strips these illusions bare. The storm shifts course, the fire outruns containment lines, and the elegant machinery of control collapses. What remains is the paradox. The more we grasp for control, the less control we actually have. This paradox is not a cliche about unpredictability. It is the fundamental tension of disaster leadership. Command is necessary, but so is humility. We must act with authority even as we admit we cannot dictate the unfolding event. We must hold steady while reality keeps shifting under our feet. We are forced to live in that uneasy space between structure and flow, between the map we draw and the terrain that refuses to cooperate. Control is seductive because it soothes our fear. In the moment, excuse me, where everything is breaking down, declaring control offers the comfort of certainty. Yet the world does not obey. The ancient Greek philosopher Epictetus reminds us that some things are up to us and some are not. Weather patterns, infrastructure, fragility, human panic, and misinformation are not up to us. Our choices, our posture, our ability to adjust, those are. Maybe it's a little sappy, but I felt like I needed to do that because I wanted to get everybody in the frame of mind that we have to take control of the things we can control and recognize the things we can't and just work to do it better next time rather than getting hung up in every bad thing that happened. And there were a lot of them, a lot of good things too, but it was a tough period of time for us. So in the welcome, we introduced our design team. We covered the survey responses and let them know kind of what the summary of that was. We went over some ground rules that it's not about personal attacks, but we are trying to identify things that need to go better, that we want to be respectful to each other. And our goal is to end up with an after action review that will identify good things so that we can build them in for the future and help us fix and make corrective actions for the things that didn't go well. I told them about the process, how they were seated as they came in was already set up in those table groups by discipline. And then we went to a breakout group discussion. We asked each table to select a scribe. We asked them each to select a speaker. They had individual discussion note sheets, which were theirs to keep, and they could make all of their notes on their own sheet and take it home. But their scribe was preparing a table notes packet and documenting everything that was identified by that group. And that was submitted after the presentation to us, and we used it in the development of the after action review. That was a really good strategy. The only thing I think is I wonder if the scribe had time to take notes for themselves. But it worked really well, and those discussions were incredibly productive across the room. In their breakout group, we had them address five areas. What issues or problems did you have? And each one of those areas was broken out by the 3 time periods, not all of them, but the first two, the issues and problems and what helped you. Those things were broken out by the time periods of the first 12 hours, 12 to 72, and 4 days to 2 weeks, so that they could say what problems happened in the first 12 hours, but it was really a different set of problems than what happened in the next, 9 or 10 days and what happened after 2 weeks. We had them identify what adapt and overcome strategies something they did that's not really part of the plan, but they needed to do it to overcome a problem, that they really liked this strategy and they want to build it in so that it becomes like it gets used again. One of the ones for me is calling other EMA directors to assist in the EOC. I wouldn't do it without the local team. In this case, I didn't have a local team because they were all in the field. Um, if they weren't on scene, then they were backing up the people who were on scene. And so that really limited my ability to call in the local people that we work with on a regular basis. But making it an actual plan of bringing other EMAs in to assist when it's that large is wildly helpful because you guys all know what to do. Even if you've never done it here, it may be slightly different, but you know what an EOC is. And once you're given some basic instructions and the contact information, um, it was incredibly helpful to us. We asked them to identify what lessons they learned in terms of what things didn't go the way they should have. We should have done this instead. We'll never do that again. And then we also asked a few questions about their personal and team well-being. Did this, impact anybody in terms of mental health? Did they get support? And how's everybody doing now? And that was very productive also. Some of them didn't say much, but there was enough information for us to know that for the most part, everybody's back on track and a lot of them did get help. Um, and that was a good thing for us because we never want to forget it. Then we went to the 10-minute report out. I put these kind of in the order that I felt people would be joining into the response. Fire and EMS and law enforcement were among the first couple to get to the scene. And the order of it worked out really well because it seemed to build the incident from the beginning. And they each reported on the discussions that they had at their table. It was just really good, so informative, and each group selected well when they chose their speaker. The sheriff spoke for law enforcement, I spoke for the EOC, and the fire department had picked one of the fire chiefs that was on duty that day. It took way more than 10 minutes to do these reports, but they were exceptional. And it brought everybody to the same page. I think a lot of things got clarified as people heard what the first responders said. They're like, oh, I didn't realize that. It really brought clarity to us on some of the things that we didn't see ourselves. So when we came back for our second meeting, we opened up the floor for the discussion on the following issues. And these things had been identified in the survey and also in the discussions that were had at the first meeting. And I'm not going to kind of labor over each one. They'll be identified clearly in the after action document. But we had issues with unrequested and unregistered volunteers. And I understand the concept of a volunteer reception center. I'm trained in it and we've done it multiple times. But in this case, they came so fast and so hard, there wasn't even time. We did end up having a local volunteer reception set up through assistance of the Medical Reserve Corps, and our health commissioner assisted with bringing people over. But the efforts went on a lot longer, so it ended up being transitioned to local people coordinating for certain communities. We have people that are trained in incident and unified command, but some of them had taken their 300 and 400 training so long ago that they just didn't remember all the details of the higher levels once you get into an area command or like we had incident command going right away. Then they transitioned and called it unified command, but not everybody was involved. And so that made it a little complicated. There were a lot of things in the EMA and EOC world that could have gone a lot better. There are some things that happened through the support of other directors who came in. Um, we used to have an online EOC software that we used, and that had expired and not been replaced yet at the time. I had contracted for a new service, but it wasn't set up. And so we ended up never using it um, at all for the entire year because we were so far in. That's not an ideal place to be. And the paper forms work, but under that load, we couldn't keep up with the paper forms and information was getting lost. So we had assistance from Union County to build a spreadsheet in Google Sheets, and we were able to share it with the people who came into the EOC by giving them access to an EOC email that we had set up. And that ended up allowing us to capture the information so that it was searchable and printable instead of just a pile of scrap papers. That is what was happening in the first day because it was going so fast. We know that we have a lot of plan updates to do because all the new things that we learned need built in, and there's some other updates that need to be completed. And we identified multiple things with our debris. Our plan is really good, and it's been used multiple times, including for federal disasters. But one of the things we learned is the scale, the sheer volume of debris and having every single type of debris at once. This is the first time we've dealt with a tornado, and especially on this scale, as we had over 1,400 in our damage assessment and 4 communities side by side that were just decimated. We are going to be building in basically another layer, an additional level to recognize that sheer volume of debris. What we had worked, but it wasn't big enough. And so we have to build the next layer. And that's, we've already got some notes on that, and it'll be coming soon in the writing of it. And then we wanted to just address critical incident stress management. We asked if it should be mandatory at a certain scale of incident. And for the most part, the responders don't want to see it be mandatory. And I don't think we can force them to do it, but I think we will always continue to offer it. Following that, we discussed the corrective action plan. What do we need to do to fix the things that were problems and who's responsible for doing it? We had a little bit of difficulty getting through this section because we had lost continuity from the first meeting to the second. But it isn't that we don't know what to do to fix it. We did identify the corrective actions that need to be taken. Not all of the final responsibility for who will implement that was assigned, although I think a lot of that is, there it is. A lot of that is going to come back to the EMA leading efforts to host training and conduct exercises. One of the things our design team wants to do is after this, after action is out there, we'll take some time to work on those actions and get them in place. And then once we have those corrective actions in place, we would like to do a series of exercises with the departments who both participated in the AAR and the response, and the ones who weren't involved in it because they were further out and they were just covering backfill for the other departments. Because within a few years, all the people who lived this and learned those lessons in person will retire. Well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them will. And we want to make sure that we don't lose the lesson. So after we get the work done, our hope is to share it forward by doing some exercises that will help other people be ready. And so where we are now, this was at the very end of the meeting. We're compiling all the data. We'll review all that data with the design team and then release it, which is where we're very near to being ready to release it to everybody. And then our final things will be implementing those solutions completing the plan updates, going through the extra training that we needed, and running some exercises. I guess I jumped that slide. And then we asked them, was there anything unclear? Did we miss anything? And there was no comments. So, sorry, I talked straight through for a half an hour. Do any of you guys have questions? Have you had to do an AAR process yourselves? Are you asleep or did you hang up? I can see the chat if any of you have questions you want to put in there, or if you want to just unmute and okay. Well, we may have reached the end of our time. Robert, did you have a question? Thanks, Melissa. Very nice. Thank you, everybody. I guess if you don't have time, if you don't have any questions, then maybe I did my job. Process of how we went about building the questions for our survey. So, well, we wanted to keep the survey pretty simple because we didn't figure people would take a lot of time because they were still working through parts of it. And so we did want to give them an opportunity to say a positive thing too, because it would be very easy to go entirely negative in something like this. So that's why the, what went well question was asked first. And we just tried to leave it very open what needs improvement. And so we did get a lot of feedback. And I appreciate anybody who's like happened to hear this that participated in answering the online survey or helped us out in the EOC. We did get some really good feedback from the participants in the EOC. In fact, our group answered the survey first. Out of the 17, I think 13 of those were responses from people that had worked in the EOC in the first round. So we just tried to leave it open for them to say anything they wanted to. Hopefully that answers your question, Tom. But we had to have it sortable, and that's why the criteria of what time period and which discipline are you commenting about. And then we let them say whatever they needed to say, and then we picked out the topics from there. Robert, we had CISM active from about the third day. We sent CISM resources out to the community at large. We had our local CISM team was very involved, so we only had a few people that weren't actively on the scene. And so they were some of our mental health providers, and they coordinated with other teams. We worked with the Allen County team. They also reached out, and I'm going to mess up the name. These guys are in Cuyahoga County is where they came down from, but they have a K9 component to their program. They came down and went to our dispatch center and also went out to the community in some other areas. We had CISM scheduled in the EOC 3 days a week for a month. We had diffusing conducted here. We did CID, which is critical incident desensitization, is what that stands for, which is kind of like first aid, emergency first aid. Sharon Saya taught us that. If any of you guys know her, she's a wonderful instructor. We know how to do it now for ourselves, but I had never even heard of it until they did it here. And then we also had some extended support with mental health just to work through some of the things that got stuck. And, I'd be lying if I didn't admit that some of that was for me, but I had a lot going on by the time this incident kicked off and it all got tangled up and it took a while to work through all of that. So, anything I did that was completely out of character in the last 2 years, I apologize, and hopefully you'll give me a little bit of grace and understanding about that. Hopefully that answers the question. Are there any other questions? You're welcome. Okay. I don't know how long we were scheduled for today. I think they said sometimes these are 20 minutes and then 10 minutes for questions. We're at about 10:36 now. I'm happy to stay if anybody has questions. If you want to hang out or you want to start talking about something else, I'll mute and just let you go. Um, Jeff, are you the boss on here?
I don't know I'd say that, but I think you did a great job. A lot of good stuff here um, that you went over. So I appreciate that. And I think if nobody really has any questions, we know
Oh,
how to get a hold of you.
hey, Jeff,
Yes,
wait, before you let them go, I want to show you something. It's not done, but I really like this part of it. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to share another
sure.
file. Okay, I queued it up before we started, but I have to pick it out here. Okay, so this is a section of our after action review. Um, and so how we put it in, ooh, don't throw up, I'm scrolling just a little bit. All right, so I just put a quick incident summary in there that talked about the damage assessment and all the stuff when we started things, and then a description of the AAR process so people will know um, what we did. And then this is how the responses are being reported. And I did it this way on purpose because if you receive a copy of this after action and you are a fire or EMS person, you're going to want to see the information about fire and EMS. Or if you're an EOC person, you're going to want to see that. So I organized it so that you can go to it by discipline. Um, so this is a list of what the problems were in the first 2 weeks based on the time period. This was directly from that first meeting from the table group discussions by the people who were on scene. And so, what issues did you have? What happened that helped you in that first 2 week period? And what lessons did you learn? Things that need to be done. And then we did law enforcement, and you're probably not going to be able to read this. When it's final, I will send it and share it with everybody. We're in the final drafting phases right now and putting together corrective actions. Um, Probably the biggest thing I learned from going through the after action is you need to give yourself time for the emotion to drain a little bit so that everybody can come together and be productive in working on this instead of just slashing and shredding each other. Um, and that's unusual because normally we want to do an after action pretty soon after an operation so that it's all fresh. But when it's very big and very controversial or emotional, sometimes you need a little more time to be ready to actually do it in a constructive way. And I think the timing for this was very good because it was incredibly constructive. Um, and then for our EOC. So this is just from the first meeting part. Um, and there's our health and medical section. And there, a lot of their corrective actions are already done because when they finished their work, I mean, within 2 weeks, everybody was out of the hospital or transferred to another facility. And so they were able to do a quick after action between the hospital and health district and some of the partners. I think they might have worked with Jody at COTS on it, but they've implemented most of their stuff already. Um, and then these are the things that came up from the elected jurisdictions. Stuff about nobody returning calls. Like if they knew how many calls we were answering, they would maybe have understood why we couldn't get them all. But this is the part where we got the answers from CISM, and I did not break those out by discipline just so that it's a little more generic and not identifying individuals. Um, Exhaustion was a real thing. Um, Anyway, these are the responses that we got for that. And then when we move to part two, so we've just started putting this in. So as we get to those key issues, there were some questions asked, and you can see. So this is still in the process of being drafted, but there was a command discussion. There was some discussion about like the fire aspect of it and law enforcement, all related to command. Um, Negatives and then positives. And so that's kind of how it's coming together in terms of the draft of the document. And then we have a separate document that is being put together for the corrective actions so that we can follow and um, so that we can follow along and track when things are completed and do some checking in with people as we go to keep it moving. I will be happy to share the AAR, but not until it's complete and released to the local people. We're getting there. It's still being drafted because there's so many working parts at the same time. It'd be nice if it was finished by now. I'd love it if it was finished by now, but hopefully in the next about 6 weeks, we should have it wrapped up and be ready to actually release that. Okay. I just wanted to show you that because it was kind of scary trying to figure out how to put it all together. And I was pretty happy when it started to look like something that would be a usable document and helpful to people who got a hold of it. So, all right. If you're sick of me, you can. I think Jeff was about to tell everybody you can go, and then I wanted to share that. So,
No, I'm glad I didn't. I think that was great how you had it broken down. That's just one more thing that I kind of picked up on this. So I'm glad that you shared it, and hopefully when you get it out to the rest of the group, and I certainly understand why they need to see it before we do. That we can all see that because I think we can take a lot of good stuff away. I got a lot of good stuff out of this. The motion high and kind of backing off a little bit before you get into this. You're right. We've always heard that. You got to do it right away or everybody's going to forget stuff, but maybe the stuff that we're forgetting is the trivial stuff that we really don't need to focus on. So I think that was a good point. I did like the flow that you had on that and how you made it as generic as possible. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the time. And if does anybody else have anything? Well, we've got you here because you just keep giving us good stuff.
thanks, Julie. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you taking time to come today. If you have ideas for topics for other EMAO coffee talks, we do not want to overlap with the ones that are being done by the CERC, by the group that's doing coffee talks for them. But if you have something that's EMA that you think would be a really good coffee talk, I hope you'll share that. You can send it to me in an email, ema@logancounty.ohio.gov, or to any of the officials of EMAO. But we're planning to host several more over the course of the year. And we'd love to have great topics that you actually want to know about. If you have something you'd love to share, we'd love to learn from you too. So thanks, Jeff. I think we're good.
Well, Helen, thank you so much. And on behalf of the Education Committee, thank you for doing this. It was a horrible thing that you
Sure.
had to go through, but I think we all got something out of it, and I appreciate you sharing that. So I wish everybody
Thankfully,
a
we
great
didn't go through it alone. Half the people on here worked in the EOC or helped out in some way. So
and I think that's the big thing that t try and remember that we can rely on each other and help everybody get through this. So I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
thank you. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.